Hey, this is Ryan Jones with Serverless Guru. In this video, we're going to be covering how to create an AWS account and start our first serverless project. In this course, we're going to be learning about how to actually build serverless projects and kind of an introduction to AWS as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we can do is we can search for the AWS console in Google, and we can pull this up. So we're going to be creating a free account. It's going to ask you for an email address, password, an AWS account name. And then as you continue, as you can see here, it says AWS accounts include 12 months of free tier access. So you'll still have to put your credit card information in. That's just in case you go over their limits. But you shouldn't be charged for anything in this course, as after we go through things, we'll be deleting them gradually. And kind of just something to note, as you create resources, you want to basically make sure that you're taking them down when you don't need them, as it is actually running on real hardware that Amazon owns, and someone has to pay for it, right? So go ahead and fill this out, create your free account, and when you're ready, go ahead and play the video. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to another tab that I already have ready. So I've already set up my account, and you should see a similar console after you sign in. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to something called IAM. So you can go to the search bar here and type IAM. This is Identity Access Management. This is how people on Amazon manage users and groups and things like that. So this allows you to create a user and then give it permission to actually use resources on AWS. And kind of the thing that you can think about with that is that everything is denied by default. So everything is private, and then you're giving kind of access to certain things. You can give access to everything, and that would be an administrator, or you can give access to specific resources. And we'll kind of do both throughout this course. For now, serverless needs admin permissions, and so we're going to give it programmatic access. This is going to give it an access key and a secret access key, and then we're going to go ahead and create this. So we have permissions here. We're going to attach a permission directly, and this is administrator access. So this is going to allow the serverless admin user to do everything on our account. And we kind of want this because we want our user to be able to create resources, anything that we want to make, we need it to be able to actually do it for us. And that's kind of the benefit of serverless. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to the terminal. So if you have another window, that would be great. Otherwise, you can search for terminal. So what we can do is we can cd. Sorry, let's just leave this here for now, and let's actually jump back to the serverless documentation. So you can go ahead and go to https://serverless.com. We're going to hit the quick start docs, and we're going to start working through how to actually set this up. So if you don't have Node.js installed, go ahead and install that. The Serverless CLI, we're going to install that right now. So you can run npm install serverless-g, and that's going to start install it globally. So if we actually run this command, it'll take a little bit, but this is basically installing serverless on our computer globally. That way we can actually use the serverless commands. So once this is done, we can go down to the next step, which is 3, and it says to create an AWS account if you don't already have one. So we've already done this, so we can kind of move past this. We're not going to watch the video, and we're going to hit set up provider credentials. So if you scroll down here, there's this little command, serverless config credentials provider AWS, and you pass in your key and secret. So it's going to do it automatically for us. So what we can do is open up the terminal. Let's go ahead and cd onto desktop, and let's touch a file called temp.txt. And if you have Atom, you can do Atom and open it. If you don't, then you can basically open it in any text editor. So let's go ahead and use Atom. This would be equivalent to just like opening notes. That's how I'm using Atom right now. And Atom's just a text editor. So we have this temp.txt. We're going to basically paste this in. And then we're going to take out this key and this secret key with our own one. So go back to the AWS console and you should see this access key ID. So go ahead and copy that. And then grab this secret key. And copy that. Okay. Now that we have this, we're going to copy it. And we are going to open the terminal. And we are going to run this command. So serverless config credentials and set up our credentials. This is going to create a default profile in the dots in the squiggly.aws credentials file, so we can actually open that up. So if you go .aws and then you do a list, and then if we cat credentials, you can see our secret and our regular key ID there. And so this should match. If it doesn't, then you can rerun these steps, and that I guess means that you already had AWS set up before, in which case you can kind of skip this to begin with. So now that we have our credentials set up, we're actually ready to move on to step 4 on the actual setup. So step 4 being set up credentials, we did that. Now we're actually ready to start deploying services. So we can do this serverless create template, AWS Node.js -- path. So let's go ahead and copy this, and we'll open up terminal again. This time, let's go ahead and make a directory on desktop. So go to desktop, and let's go ahead and create a directory called serverless. Looks like do make directory serverless and cd serverless. Let's go ahead and cd into serverless. Okay, and we have my first app and temp.txt. This was from a prior attempt at creating this video. So let's go ahead and create a new directory called let's go ahead and paste this. So basically what this is going to do is we're going to create a new project. It's going to use the AWS-Node.js template, which means that the serverless framework is actually going to write some code for you so you can get started a little bit faster. And then this -- path is actually how you specify what directory. So we're going to say my new project. And you can see the cool animation comes back, serverless. You've created your boilerplate code. Now we can cd into our my new project directory. And we can look inside. I'm going to open this in Atom. If you have a different editor, you can use that. I like Atom just because it's kind of simple and kind of easy to just like run without having to worry about anything else. So there's a couple of core things that we can look at here. First, let's go over the files. So you have serverless.yaml. This is your core file that actually deploys resources. And then you have the handler.js. This is actually for a Lambda function, which we'll talk about in a minute. It comes with a git ignore. This is for source control. So this allows you to post it up to GitHub or go to something like Bitbucket and then kind of remove files that you don't want to be in there. So jumping into the serverless file, this file right here kind of defines everything. So a serverless file could have databases, it could have your S3 buckets for image storage, it could have Lambda functions or queuing systems. It could have pretty much anything that you can imagine can be in here. And there's also serverless plugins that you can tap into to do cool things. So without kind of jumping into anything else, let's just go ahead and try to deploy it, right? So what we can do is we can look down here. So to deploy your service, you can run this serverless deploy command. So we'll do serverless deploy -v. And the dash V is for verbose. It's just going to basically print out a little bit more detail. So you can see it starting to create, and let's go ahead and jump back here so you can see it happening. So this is going to create a CloudFormation stack called My New Project. It's going to create a runtime of Node.js 6.1. You can also do Python, Go, Java, C#, F#. They support a lot of things. The serverless framework also is cloud agnostic, so you can actually use different providers to deploy resources. So if you were going to do Google, like the Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure, you could actually specify that here and change that. This is your functions definition. This is actually what's telling it to go to this handler file and then actually deploy. And so if we jump into the handler file and you look at module.exports hello, it means that this file is exporting a variable called hello, and then inside of our serverless file we're actually saying go to this file and go to this function and then use that as the starting place for Lambda. Okay, looks like it's been deployed. So now what we can do is we can jump back to our AWS account, and inside of this dropdown in services we can search for Lambda. So it looks like we have a new function that was created 40 seconds ago. It has a code size and a runtime. So if we click inside of here, we can see that we have our code that was locally inside of here, which is great. It looks like everything is put together. So we can go ahead and create a test event. And so this test event is basically just going to test our code to see if it's working or not. This is good for testing like your modules. It's something to do every time you have a new project because sometimes the packaging can mess up, and when that happens, you may have code that actually works, but it's pointing at the wrong locations. And so that's just something that you have to kind of work through. So now that we're testing, we can see that it came back successfully. It comes back with a status code and a body, and we can actually see that we're the ones that are specifying this here. So what we can do is instead of this message, we can change this and say, hooray. And we can save, and then we can test it again. If we scroll up, we can see that it came back with hooray. So you can do two things. You can either code locally or you can code on the browser. And so coding on the browser is kind of a bad idea just because if anything happens with your connection or you refresh the page, you are potentially going to lose that code. And sometimes obviously you can get into that mode where you're focused on writing the code and then you maybe copy paste and change a whole bunch of things, and then you don't hit this save button up here, and what ends up happening is your code gets lost. So this has happened to me before, something to look out for. But this is the kind of the intro to how all this works. So we've created a Lambda function. We are sending a response back when the Lambda function is triggered by hitting this test button. We are defining it inside of this handler.js, and now we can actually make changes. 1, 2, 3. This is cool. And we can also do a console log. And we can say console log event. And now it's saved, and we can reopen the terminal and we can run serverless deploy-v. And so this is going to look at our code that's been changed and then automatically re-upload it to AWS. And so this is much better than writing it in the browser, but that's also another option that you can do. This also allows you to do things like have linters or use any kind of tool set that you want to, whether it's like Visual Studio Code, Atom, or some type of IDE. Okay, so it's successfully deployed. So now we can go back to the browser, we can refresh this, and if we scroll down to our code, we can actually see that it's changed. So it's loading the function, 1, 2, 3, this is cool. It's console logging the event, and we can hit test. And if we scroll up, this is cool, and then there's our event. So this is what I would say, this is the intro video to serverless, and the future videos we're going to kind of cover more of all the capability that serverless has. But this is all it takes to actually get something running on AWS and actually start doing something cool. So this was Ryan Jones with Serverless Guru. I will see you next time.